Sugar has been vilified, I think, a little too much.
It reminds me of those people who use alcohol, like they're using their dark chocolate as the after dinner drink or the glass of wine or something like that. I love it. Those stations all along the marathon path should hand out, in addition to water and bananas, dark chocolate.
That could work. Yeah, that could work.
Hi, and welcome to Upgraded Biology. My name is Dr. Tami and I'm your host. Upgraded Biology is the outcome of 20 years of practicing functional medicine and specializing in hormones. This podcast is where we will present all the information and tools I've learned and continue to learn on how to harmonize and optimize all aspects of your health. Before we begin, I'd like to emphasize that this podcast is separate from my medical practice, BioThrive, where I practice as a physician. It is, however, part of my desire to bring free information to the general public so that each listener is able to step more fully into their role as the CEO of their own health and upgrade their own biology. Welcome to Upgraded Biology, where we explore the science and practical wisdom behind optimizing your health. Hi, I'm Dr. Tami, and today we're diving deep into the heart of cardiovascular health, quite literally. Joining us is Patrick Sullivan, co-founder of Jigsaw Health, a company that's not just about making supplements, but about making them with solid clinical research. You see, in a world awash with claims, it's refreshing to find a company that does the homework. Patrick is here to shed light on the critical role that magnesium, a mineral that seems to hold the keys to many of our health puzzles. He'll take us through his journey from the world of rock music to pioneering health solutions, where clinical trials are as important as the melody once was. Today's episode is a treasure chest of insights, from understanding why so many of us are deficient in magnesium to how supplementing it correctly can profoundly impact our cardiovascular system. Imagine this, a study showing magnesium supplements improving blood pressure and heart health in just 90 days. Sounds like something out of a health detective novel, doesn't it? Patrick and I will unravel the mysteries of magnesium deficiency. How does it manifest, those pesky nighttime cramps, and why our modern diet leaves us high and dry on this essential mineral? It turns out the balance between magnesium and calcium is more delicate than you might think. They're like two kids on a seesaw dictating the rhythm of our hearts. As we explore, we'll also touch on a critical consumer tip: how to ensure that the supplements you choose actually contain what they promise. In a market where counterfeit products are as real a threat as ever, knowing how to trust but verify isn't just a good idea, it's essential for being the CEO of your own health. By the end of today's episode, you'll have the knowledge to make informed choices about integrating magnesium into your health regimen, and why doing so might just be one of the easiest steps towards a healthier heart. Before we begin, I'd like to emphasize that this podcast is separate from my medical practice as a doctor. It is, however, part of my desire to bring free information to the general public so that each listener is able to step more fully into their role as the CEO of their own health and upgrade their own biology. So sit back, relax, and let this episode guide your heart health journey. Remember, it's not just about preventing disease, but creating a rhythm of life where well-being takes center stage. Now let's dive into this conversation with Patrick Sullivan. Welcome, everybody. I have the pleasure of having Patrick Sullivan join us today on Upgraded Biology, and we're still in our amazing cardiovascular month. And Patrick is the co-founder of this amazing supplement company called Jigsaw. And the reason that he's here sharing with us is that there are so few supplement companies that bother to do clinical research. And everybody should know that I'm a data freak. I love when things can just be. I don't have to convince anybody about anything. And so it turns out that there are a few supplements, probably Patrick's going to share more than a few, but some specifics on
supplement deficiencies that can harm our heart, and supplements that can improve our cardiovascular health and prevention. So thank you so much for being here, Patrick. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Tami. So good to be here with you today and talk all things magnesium and cardiovascular. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that they should rename magnesium like Magnesium the Miracle or something like that. It's just amazing.
Dr. Dennis Goodman wrote a book called Magnificent Magnesium that was published years ago. And magnesium, one of the things I like to say is I got 99 problems and magnesium solved like 98 of them.
Wow, that is amazing. And so you and I became acquainted at a health conference years ago, and I was so impressed. Like I said, who does clinical trials on magnesium? And your clinical trial was specifically about cardiovascular disease. So why don't you first kind of bring us back to the birth of Jigsaw, because you were literally a rock star first before you got into the health. And then how did you end up focusing on clinical work? Because you're not a physician, you're not a researcher, but you became a researcher of sorts.
Well, after I hung up the guitar, yes, I became a bit of a research nut. And my wife and I actually did play together in a band professionally for about 8 or 9 years. I won't tell you the name of the band because you probably can't find anything about it and you wouldn't have heard about it anyways. But it sure was a lot of fun. My dad and I started Jigsaw Health together in 2005. So we're going to celebrate our 20th birthday this year. And my dad was really the one that came up with the product MAG SRT, SRT standing for Sustained Release Technology. And he came up with that product out of his own need. So as he was in the late 80s, early 90s, trying to uncover the pieces to his own health puzzle, he would read sections of a book that said, you know, here's a checklist of magnesium deficiency symptoms. And he would say, oh my gosh, I got all those symptoms. So he'd go to the drugstore, get a bottle of magnesium supplements, take it, and have explosive diarrhea. I don't know if we have to bleep that out, but that's basically what he would have. And what he learned was, okay, magnesium, the side effect is that it will draw water to it. So if you take a whole bunch of magnesium, it will act as a laxative. And in fact, magnesium citrate is usually what is used to prepare someone for a colonoscopy. It's using a side effect of magnesium. Well, my dad, like many other millions and millions of people, would prefer to not have the laxative explosive diarrhea effect and instead, hey, help me with this checklist of symptoms. So that led my dad to say, okay, if I used a very absorbable form of magnesium and slowed down the release so that I could take a high dose, but it broke down over time and was able for my body was able to absorb it over time, would that make it so that I could actually finally increase the amount of magnesium that was being absorbed, really absorb, however you want to say it, into my red blood cells and into my bones and my organs. And so the product MAG SRT that he invented in 2005, we did a human clinical trial in 2018 because we had thousands of 5-star reviews, but I felt like there was really an opportunity to put our money where our mouth was and to determine and really validate the great positive feedback and the ratings and the reviews that we were getting. So we put the product to the test in, cutting to the chase. The Scottsdale Magnesium Study was 91 humans, placebo controlled. It was eventually published in the Journal of American College of Nutrition. And those results are indexed in PubMed. So it was peer reviewed, randomized controlled trial, the gold standard.
I was going to say,
I mean,
what was the results?
Well, the good news is we did beat placebo. So we looked at three things. Number one was self-reported deficiency symptoms. Number two was MAG serum levels. And then number three, MAG RBC, red blood cell count levels at the 30-day and 90-day marker. The results were that MAG serum was increased by 22%. MAG RBC was increased by 30% at 90 days, meaning there was uptake in the red blood cell turnover. Excuse me. And then finally, magnesium deficiency symptoms decreased by 63% over that 90-day period. And what's kind of interesting is that on the RBC magnesium is that it increased by 6% in 30 days, and it increased by 30% after 90 days. So it shows that regular usage is showing that the red blood cells are turning over, and the magnesium is getting into the system. That's obviously what you want it to do, so that magnesium can do its job.
So what are some of the symptoms of a magnesium deficiency? Like, not everybody is going to convince a doctor to order an RBC magnesium. There are very few doctors who will check nutrient statuses. I mean, we do, but it's not common.
Yes, you do, because you love to see the data of what's happening inside of your patients. I know we've had that conversation before, and I love you for that. I think that's fantastic that you're looking at that at such a close cellular level. The number one, I think the first telltale symptom of a magnesium deficiency would be like Charlie horses or like nighttime cramps that just all of a sudden sneak up on you. It's interesting. There's actually two types of muscle cramps. So cramps in the middle of the night, that's a sign of a magnesium deficiency. If you're playing a sport such as pickleball, which happens to be my favorite sport at the moment, and you start to cramp up, cramping in the midst of an activity is actually a sign of a potassium deficiency. So most of the time, and myself, like growing up, it's like, oh, you have cramps, have a banana. But there's two types of cramps. And my cramps from playing soccer out in the Dallas heat of summer, my cramps would always happen in the middle of the night. So eating a banana wasn't working. Magnesium is what I really needed to get. And of course, magnesium you can find in foods like pumpkin seeds, cashews, almonds. Actually, dark chocolate is a good source of magnesium as well. But make sure that it's like cacao, like 70% cacao. You don't want to get too much sugar, and you want to make sure you're getting the magnesium from it.
So your clinical trial also had some cardiovascular focus, if I'm correct in remembering, and just, or maybe it's just the magnesium part of cardiovascular health. Talk to me about cardiovascular link with magnesium. Why would our heart be affected by a magnesium deficiency? What's going on there?
Okay, so during the Scottsdale Magnesium Study, our researchers discovered that MAG-SRT was able to decrease the systolic blood pressure by 11% over that 90-day period. And that was in individuals with untreated stage 1 hypertension. The systolic blood pressure was dropped from an average of 145 down to 129. And that difference was statistically significant, easy for me to say, compared to the placebo group. Furthermore, and this to me shows it worked, the 30 days after that MAG-SRT supplementation ended, both the systolic and the diastolic blood pressure reverted back to their baseline values. So the SBP went back up from 129 to 144, 145. So that blood pressure signal is really important for cardiovascular. And I like to try and explain it to people. Calcium and magnesium are two electrolytes that are like two kids on a teeter-totter. And they create this peristaltic back and forth pumping action that happens. So calcium clenches, magnesium relaxes. It goes back and forth, back and forth. What does that look like? That looks like our arteries pumping blood through the body. So when I think the thing that is most interesting is that if you think about the food supply, the standard American diet in general, it's so much easier to get calcium in our diet than it is to get magnesium. And one of the things that the Scottsdale Magnesium Study found was that 75% of people, when we tested them, their initial magnesium levels, they were deficient. They were clinically deficient in magnesium based upon their mag serum and their initial mag RBC. In their deficiency symptoms, 100% of them reported having enough symptoms to say, I might be magnesium deficient. By the end of the study, 90 days later, there was a 63% reduction in magnesium deficiency symptoms, which kind of makes sense if you're taking a magnesium that gets absorbed. It works on paper. It works in the brain, in the mind of the patient. So all of the things that we looked at, including that cardiovascular element of blood pressure being reduced, happened over, a really quick period. Happened in 90 days.
So why are we so deficient in magnesium?
Yeah. I think we're so deficient in magnesium because it's just not very prevalent in the food that we eat. If you look across, the chicken sandwich at Chick-fil-A or the burger from Burger King, those foods are almost no magnesium. If you're going to get a salad at Wildflower or whatever, and you're getting leafy greens, okay, now you're starting to get more magnesium. But I think it's one, the food that we're eating, and two, the magnesium burn rate that we're all encountering. So the phrase magnesium burn rate, I'm quoting medical researcher Morley Robbins, who basically said the more stress we have, the more energy we use to combat that stress. And energy is not just ATP, adenosine triphosphate, it's actually Mg2 plus ATP, magnesium ATP. So the more energy we need, the more magnesium we're using, the higher our magnesium burn rate. And if we're not replenishing enough, our bodies are just going down and down and down and down.
That's fascinating because that tells us that not everybody needs the same amount of magnesium, right? Because your burn rate will be different. I would have to think that our farming practices might also be affecting our food. Like I know the Environmental Working Group, which is an amazing group that does great studies, did a study on fruits and vegetables of, today versus 50 years ago. And they did find a statistically significant drop in the levels of vitamins and minerals in our food. Like an apple today is not like your grandma's apple. And I would think that magnesium would be one of those ones that if you don't leave your food in the dirt long enough, it can't absorb all of the nutrients that it's supposed to, but we're picking it early. We're picking it green so that we can ship it across the country and let it sit on the shelf for weeks.
Well, I'm not an expert in soil health, but it has become a recent fascination. And of the various documentaries that I've watched on the subject, one of my favorite is probably The Biggest Little Farm. It's a story of a couple that moves from Los Angeles out to sort of farming country in an hour outside of Los Angeles and turn essentially a dirt patch into a beautiful, regenerative, organic farm. And it's over the process of about 7 years. But the thing that comes to mind is the cows that are eating the grass, green grass, that are then pooping and pushing it into the soil, like that creates the ecosystem upon which the whole farm relies. but it's that greenery that isn't from fertilizer that was purchased from Monsanto. It's the fertilizer that came from nature doing what nature does in this beautiful cyclical thing. I think what I was most impressed in that documentary is there was a gentleman that was kind of their wise wizard helping them that said regenerative organic farming is the easiest way to farm, but it's the hardest thing to get there. Because there's so much nature that happens along the way that is frustrating. And that's what the documentary is very much about, their 7-year journey to get to a self-sustaining ecosystem that is, I mean, it's so inspiring and so beautiful what they've created. And I would venture to guess that 99% of the products found in the grocery store are not coming from that tiny little regenerative organic farm, but rather these mega farms that are relying so much on synthetic fertilizers that probably don't have enough magnesium, and who knows what other nutrients and minerals are not there. I think that in America, we have a real problem with the food supply, and it's something that I'm very hopeful is starting to be addressed, and at least consumers are starting to become more aware about it. And this whole Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Make America Healthy Again movement, I believe that there actually is some real legs there, and I'm hopeful to do my part to help be a part of it. In fact, my wife Ashley and I, our team is working on a documentary feature right now called Breaking Big Food: How the American Food System Went Rotten and How It's Being Revived. And the stories that we're capturing on camera right now really are incredible and inspiring. And I'm like, how did I get here? How did I get from a stage playing guitar to a goat farm, milking a goat, like asking these really insightful, amazing, eclectic farmers and dairymen, why do you do what you do and how do you make this so good? And, finding out that, wow, real does taste a lot better.
It does, but it also requires a retraining of your taste buds. When you first taste real food, it doesn't taste as delicious, usually, to most people, period. Yeah. And it's because our food-like substances, which we call food, which are really not food, there's big science to hit all your taste buds and your neurotransmitters and all of this, like in a big, big, bold way, so that you want more.
Yeah.
And so when you taste a tomato, most people don't appreciate that it actually tastes sweet because you're used to such a different high level of sweet that a tomato, your taste buds are kind of ruined. They have to just calm the heck down. They've been overstimulated so that you can appreciate this. This isn't a political podcast in any way, shape, or form, but I think if Kennedy focuses just on food, he'll have more than enough to do in the entire time. And it couldn't be, a more impactful way to help our health. And I always love when food can be our medicine, but it sounds like it's very challenging for us to get enough magnesium just from food, even if we're being, focused and pedantic about eating magnesium-rich foods. So then it comes to, well, what types of magnesium? People don't realize there's so many types of magnesium. You've mentioned a couple: magnesium citrate, great for, for constipation because it just draws all that water in and it helps things flow, kind of like Miralax, right? It's the nature's Miralax. But there's other types of magnesium, and how on earth does someone choose a magnesium supplement? Question number one. Question number two, is there a best time to take magnesium? If it's helping with night cramps, what if you don't get night cramps? Should you still take it at night? What's the best time and why?
Great questions. I'm I created actually we can put it in the show notes. I created a little cheat sheet called My 5 Favorite Ways to Get Magnesium. And it includes 3 different forms of magnesium. Let me go through those right now and I'll explain the differences and how they work and sort of why they work and when they work. So my first favorite kind would be magnesium glycinate. I typically recommend and use this myself at night. Magnesium bound to the amino acid glycine has a great way of sort of calming down the brain, which is great for sort of nighttime brain chatter. At Jigsaw Health, we put that form of magnesium into a product called Mag Soothe, as in soothe the brain. So my second favorite way to get magnesium, my second favorite form would be magnesium malate. That is magnesium bound to malic acid. And that's somewhat of an energizing form of magnesium. So I take that via the Jigsaw Mag SRT, the product we were talking about earlier, the sustained release technology magnesium. I take that usually at lunchtime. And that I do as a high dose. I'm taking 500 milligrams of magnesium via Mag SRT in that magnesium malate form. My third favorite kind is somewhat of a newer form of magnesium. It's called magnesium L-threonate. It's magnesium bound to threonic acid. And there's some interesting studies on this material. MIT did some studies that showed magnesium would get into past the blood-brain barrier. And really, magnesium is used across the entire body. A lot of people do think of magnesium as for the heart, but magnesium is being used all over your body. Morley Robbins, who I mentioned earlier, he calls magnesium the conductor of the orchestra because it's used at the beginning of so many different biochemical pathways. Without magnesium, those chemical reactions cannot occur. So if you don't have magnesium, you start to feel like a rundown B-rate orchestra, I guess, at that point, right? So those are my 3 favorite kinds of magnesium. And I would say all of those forms of magnesium are also going to help with regularity because they're going to increase the peristaltic action happening inside of the body. I actually typically don't recommend using a magnesium citrate, even if you are constipated, because it has too much of what my wife would call the yo-yo effect, where you go from constipated to look out below. Better to just get the GI tract moving in a regular, steady motion. And you can do that with any combination of those 3 forms of magnesium. Again, that's magnesium glycinate, generally at night, magnesium malate, generally during the day, and then magnesium threonate, which I also take during the day. And that third one, the magnesium threonate, Jigsaw Health, we sell that in a form, in a product called Brain Boost, because again, it gets past the blood-brain barrier. So those are the 3 magnesium supplements that I take. And then there's a couple of other notes on foods in that 5 favorite ways to get magnesium. Again, pumpkin seeds, cashews, almonds, and then dark chocolate, some of my favorite ways to get magnesium from food.
Doctor's orders. I have to have chocolate. Bummer.
What's your stance on chocolate? Yay or nay?
I think that chocolate is great for a treat. All
Yes.
about the 80-20 rule. And, full disclosure, I wish I loved dark chocolate. I don't. When I'm reaching for chocolate, I'm reaching for something sweet. And it doesn't have as much sugar in it. So I do of course I know the value of dark chocolate, but it's not my treat. And I think that if 80% of what we eat feeds our cells, 20% is allowed to feed our satisfaction.
Yeah.
Our bodies are way more resilient than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
So
there's a theory that chocolate cravings is actually another symptom of magnesium deficiency. In fact, it's listed on the magnesium deficiency questionnaire. How often do you crave chocolate? So it's like our bodies intuitively know what we need. And we see like, oh, a chocolate craving. Now, granted, Hershey and Mars and Big Food has figured out a way to sort of bastardize most of the chocolate. But the chocolate that my wife gets and we like to eat is an organic dark chocolate with about 70% cacao, and it uses only organic cane sugar as the sweetener. So each square, each 1 ounce square will contain 70 milligrams of magnesium. And we haven't gone yet into how much magnesium do you need per day, but the RDI is 420 milligrams. So 1 square is like, what is that, 20% ish of your RDI? I happen to believe that the RDI is low, and we really need to get a lot more than that. But in defense of my nighttime 2 squares of chocolate, Dr. Tami, I'm getting 140 milligrams of magnesium into my body. So that's not so bad.
We went and visited some friends in Maine over the summer, a couple summers ago. And, there was a big family meal and we helped, my husband's an amazing cook. And so we helped create this meal. But their habit is at the end of the meal, they put a few bars of dark chocolate, organic cacao, chocolate bars on the table, and people just grab a piece. And it's a way to not have it's a way to extend the dinner and the conversation. And it's a nice way to finish that ritual with always having a piece of dark chocolate at the end. And I thought that was a great sort of dessert habit. Yeah. I loved it.
I like that a lot. I find when I am, it's kind of our nighttime ritual, usually about 7 p.m., watching a show. Both Ashley and I will have 2 squares of chocolate. And I find that I'm eating like a nibble each time. And I can have those 2 squares, I can have them last for 30 minutes. And it's flavored so well. I'm getting the magnesium that my body loves. And I'm getting this like sugar. I think, we haven't gotten into sugar, but sugar has been vilified, I think, a little too much. And it's sort of like the pendulum is like, no sugar, no sugar. And now we're starting to find, you know what, actually, our bodies do need a little bit of glucose. It depends where it's coming from. Sugar from high fructose corn syrup, not so good. Sugar from natural organic cane sugar, pretty good. And the body seems to know when it's eating organic cane sugar and it doesn't have all these other Frankenstein ingredients in it. The body seems to know, yeah, we've had enough. You don't end up overindulging. And I'll bet what happened in Maine at their dinner is like people will have little pieces of squares of chocolate, but nobody's eating 3 candy bars.
No.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a large family there and they only have 2 or 3 of them and everybody just grabs a little bit. And it's just, it reminds me of those people who use alcohol, like they're using their dark chocolate as the after dinner drink or the glass of wine or something like that. I love it.
Yeah.
So back to cardiovascular, we know that from your study, thank you for providing data. And we know that it's going to lower blood pressure. That's always going to improve your cardiovascular risk and health. But I would have to think that it goes further than that. If it's helping the relaxation phase of muscle, by the end of the day, we do know that the heart is a muscle. Mm-hmm. And so if it's helping the relaxation phase, then to not have the heart be in this constant hyper state, I don't know, I'm just thinking aloud here. Is that part of what the cardiovascular benefits of magnesium are, is in the relaxation phase of the muscle itself?
Rick Malter is a PhD researcher that lives not too far from me. He's based in Sedona, Arizona. I'm based in Scottsdale, Arizona. I heard an interesting theory from him years ago about magnesium being like the fuel rods of the heart, because the heart is, we think of it, it's often described as a pump, right? But it's more like a nuclear reactor. and it runs on magnesium. And the thing that Rick brought up at this lunch that we had together years ago was each year there are one or two marathoners who die suddenly before they cross the finish line. They're like a mile or so away from reaching their 26.2 mile destination, and they pass up. And he theorizes, it's the best theory I've heard so far, that it's essentially they literally used their last bit of magnesium. So remember what I was talking about, calcium clenching and magnesium relaxing, and that needing to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Well, these runners who most likely have been training and pushing themselves, and as they're pushing themselves and improving potentially their lung capacity and their ability, their stamina to be able to run for 26.2 miles, they're not replenishing with enough magnesium, so that by the time they go to do their big race, towards the end of the race, their body literally has its last drop of magnesium used and their heart seizes up. You can Google it. I think the Boston Marathon had a few months ago, someone die at the end. And this is actually a common occurrence. It happens a couple times a year. His theory, Rick Malter's theory, is the best one that I have heard so far. Why would an otherwise healthy marathoner at the very last mile fall over dead, except for could not push back on calcium, magnesium, calcium, magnesium, calcium? Kind of a crazy theory, but to me, that was the one that made sense. And it's always stuck with me.
So those stations all along the marathon path should hand out, in addition to water and bananas, dark chocolate.
That could work. Yeah, that could work. It's funny because there are 5 key electrolytes, calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, and chloride. And oftentimes people think of like, okay, electrolytes, sodium, potassium, but they're not thinking often of magnesium. And if you look at like your typical electrolyte drink, Gatorade, Powerade, these have almost zero magnesium. It's primarily sugar, number one, dyes, number two, a little bit of potassium, a little bit of sodium, almost zero magnesium. And it's completely opposite to basically what the body needs. The body does not need, the American Heart Association says that the body needs about 25 grams of sugar per day. I don't know if that's right. I don't know if that's wrong, but a bottle, like a 32-ounce bottle of Gatorade, has 50 grams of sugar a day and almost zero magnesium. So I don't know. My bone to pick with the American Heart Association is they speak almost not at all about the importance of magnesium, and then reject or don't even act. They act like Dr. Dennis Goodman's book, who is a cardiologist based in New York, a teaching and practicing cardiologist. They just ignore all the research in his book, Magnesium, the Magnificent Mineral. Magnificent Magnesium is the name of Dr. Goodman's book. And it's like, why? And we don't need to get tinfoil hat and conspiracy theory, but I think that we as a society are starting to see that, follow the dollar. If there is no magnesium lobby, there is no magnesium association. So there's nobody to donate to the American Heart Association on behalf of the magnesium lobby, the non-existent magnesium lobby. So maybe that's why you're not hearing about magnesium from the American Heart Association. Just my theory, my opinion.
Yeah. It's difficult because, to play devil's advocate, I know that there's very few natural things like magnesium or supplements or that have clinical trials, and clinical trials are extremely expensive. And so if there is no other side to create a medication or something that can be patented, because we can't patent nature,
Right.
then how are they going to recoup the cost to do a proper clinical trial is how I think about it without getting into conspiracy. And yet on the other hand, how are we ever going to change the insanity of not utilizing what's so easily available, like magnesium? Cardiovascular disease, I don't think people understand. It's the number one killer of everybody. So by the time a woman has reached menopause, she now has reached the same risk for cardiovascular disease as a man. And prior to that, because of estrogen and things like that. So we menopausal women need to be utilizing tools that are so easy. And as the CEO of our own health, easy to implement, right? Who can't find a magnesium supplement? Which leads me to my second question. Not all supplements are created equal, right? Recently, Amazon had a lawsuit for counterfeit supplements. There's some great research and investigations. One in 2009 that I can remember that took apart the pills that they got it everywhere, Costco, Walgreens. I mean, it was just everywhere. And they discovered that what was on the label did not match what was on the pill.
Yep.
And that's a significant statement. It doesn't just mean that, oh, this magnesium 500 milligrams was 430 milligrams. It meant that there was like rat bits and ground up house plants. And they did a DNA analysis. So how do we so we now know we need magnesium. We need magnesium for our muscles. We need magnesium for our nervous system. But we need magnesium for our cardiovascular system. How do we find a good one?
My dad and I started Jigsaw Health in 2005. So I've been in this industry for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of those controversies and thought about it from the perspective of a CEO. How do I give my customers confidence that we're doing the right thing? One of the things was to do a clinical trial, the Scottsdale Magnesium Study that we've been talking about. The other thing was we began to publish third-party testing results on our website for each batch of every product that we make, probably about 10 years ago in 2015. And that was a pretty expensive step for us to do, because we were doing testing, but we were doing sort of input testing when the materials arrive. And then upon manufacture, we would do that, but our manufacturer was bearing that cost. I like the phrase that Ronald Reagan used, trust but verify. And so we implemented that third step to verify the results that our manufacturing partners were giving us. And it has been really useful to show our customers and to build trust with our customers that they know that what's in the bottle is what's on the label. What's on the label is what's in the bottle, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Strike that and reverse it, as Willy Wonka once said.
So amazing. And that's why when people are looking for the most affordable supplement, it may actually be detrimental. I always tell my patients, if something's powerful enough to do good, it can do harm. So if you don't really know what you're getting, because there is no third party testing, you don't really know what you're getting.
Correct.
Like at all. So how would one know that there's third party testing done on a particular supplement?
Well, we publish the results for each product on our website, on each product page. I think that we were really one of the first, Jigsaw Health was one of the first companies to start doing this. There are many, I don't know how many companies that are now doing it, but I'm glad to see many of my peers starting to do this. Testing has become more and more commonplace for vendors that are building reputable products. It's just kind of raised the bar for everybody. So I'm glad to see that, because I don't want to be or feel like I'm in a bad industry. Like, I don't want somebody to be like, oh, you have a company that does that. So I really, since I've been attending industry conferences over the last decade plus, have been pushing others in our industry that we need more transparency, and we the brands have to lead with it. We can't just say, oh, well, FDA needs to demand it. It's like, why do we need the regulations? Why don't we just do it? Why don't we just
it's
show
the right
it?
thing.
Yeah. Don't we want to know that our manufacturing partner or our manufacturing team did the thing that we wanted them to do correctly? Otherwise you're literally just taking them at your word. And like I said, Ronald Reagan said it best: trust but verify.
Yeah, absolutely. So some people are not going to websites to purchase their supplements. They're going through third parties. I mean, I would imagine that your supplements are also available on third parties. Mm-hmm. Is there something on the supplements themselves that patients or people rather can know that something is third party tested without having to do like a deep dive research into every website of every company of every supplement that they take?
Yeah, we on all Jigsaw Health products put a badge that says third party tested or third party verified. Other companies are doing that kind of thing as well. Unfortunately, there's no sort of regulatory anything on those kinds of badges. So there could be some nefarious actors selling products and just stealing the badge, putting it on the label. So unfortunately for consumers, you do have to kind of do a little bit of homework or choose a brand like Jigsaw Health or Now Foods comes to mind. They're a really good brand that does a lot of testing and a lot of thought leadership. And Now Foods was one of the brands that had some counterfeit claims on Amazon. They're such a big brand. There's sort of a big target for the bad guys to target them. But I know the leadership there, and I know that they do a good job of policing that and of doing their own testing. So that would be an example of a good brand. One of the things that kind of jumps out to me is a lot of on a number of different supplements, especially if you go to like an Amazon or whatever, you'll see made in an FDA registered laboratory. Well, that would be like putting a sticker on a car that says made in a car factory. Every laboratory that makes supplements has to be registered by the FDA. So people that do that kind of badge on their product, I kind of have a little bit of like what else are you maybe doing to your product that isn't maybe so good? Another badge that you'll often see next to the made in an FDA registered laboratory is good manufacturing practices.
The CGMP.
CGMP, certified good manufacturing practices. Well, per the law, we are all required to use certified good manufacturing practices. So it's kind of like, again, made in a car factory. Okay. But
so it tells us that the kitchen is there and it has all the things that it's supposed to have, but it doesn't tell us about the ingredients that should be in there, that shouldn't be in there, and the quantities that match the label, etc. Right. What about USP?
USP is a good one. USP is an independent third-party verifier. So yeah, if you're seeing USP, that's a good stamp.
Great. And if they don't have a stamp or a statement, should people assume that it isn't being done? Because this is how prevalent is this in your industry? Are people who aren't saying it are just going, well, I hope nobody really knows so that we're not lying, but we're not telling. Don't ask, don't tell.
Right. I've heard various claims of, how prevalent is it in the industry? I actually don't think it's prevalent at all on the reputable brands. because number one, it's not actually that hard or challenging to make the product correctly. You just do it the right way and show that you did it the right way. And you're going to have customers buying and using and rating your product with 5 stars. So just doing it the right way isn't that difficult. Does it add cost? Yes. But is it?
I was just going to say it's a profitability thing.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, it's an investment. It's not a cost.
Mm-hmm. I find that a lot of patients come to me and they'll say things like, Dr. So-and-so's brand of supplements, I respect him or her, and so I'm doing this, and not realizing that those physicians have not created supplement companies like you. Correct. What they're doing is they're taking another company and they're just slapping a label on for marketing purposes. Correct. So that they can be a brand ambassador. And if those companies are not bothering to put the USP or third party tested, then it's not.
Correct. Yeah. And I would say probably 20-ish years ago, the dietary supplement industry was a bit more wild, wild west. In fact, 20 years ago, good manufacturing practices were not required. Kind of an interesting thing. That really came about over the course, really over the about 2010 or so is when it became really in good manufacturing practices became law. And I would say in the last 15 years, yes, it is. That's just the way it's done. And good manufacturing practices, essentially, we joke that it stands for GMP, stands for get more paper. It's essentially, if you don't write it down, it didn't happen, which is actually a really good practice, because if there is ever a safety concern, you got to go back to the records and figure out, well, what did we do? So if you didn't write it down, you won't know what you did. That is the essence of good manufacturing practices. If you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. So yes, it adds costs and it adds more time, but it's absolutely the right thing to do. And I would say now here in 2025, every reputable manufacturer is following and utilizing and delivering much better, higher quality products because of GMPs. But 20 years ago, there were some fly-by-night garage operators that were like, wait a second, if we just get a bunch of powders, mix it together and buy a $5,000 encapsulating machine, we can sell this $3 bottle for $90. Let's try it. That was the state 20 years ago for a very small percentage of the industry. Today, I don't know of anybody doing that.
Well, that's good news. Good news for the consumers and overall.
Yeah, there is, unfortunately, I guess I need to append that statement. There is, because there's so much merchandise moving through Amazon, there is a problem with counterfeit. And so those are the not good manufacturing practices. I don't know what those companies are doing. I'm guessing that most of them are offshore in China. And it is a major problem, not only on dietary supplements, but on tons of different goods for Amazon. I myself have actually, I feel like I've lost a certain amount of confidence. I was a huge Amazon fan, but in the last year or so, I've lost a certain amount of confidence as I'm reading more and more sort of insider stories of other sellers. Jigsaw Health, we're a third-party seller to Amazon. So our products go from our warehouse into Amazon's warehouse. They don't go through any third parties. They go directly from Jigsaw Health into Amazon's. But what I've learned is that there's a chance another fake seller could try to duplicate a Jigsaw Health product, ship it to Amazon as if they were a registered reseller of Jigsaw, and Amazon will allow it. I wish Amazon would come to us and say, hey, is this party a registered reseller? And we could say yes or no. But right now, Amazon doesn't have any guards in place to protect against that kind of fraud. So until Amazon comes up with some strong guidelines for that, my confidence has really kind of gotten a lot lower in Amazon, sadly. because they
Yeah,
were, I
especially
think,
for
once a great company.
supplements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially
Yeah.
for stuff that you're going to ingest into your body, you
Right.
know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to buy bird seed, I don't care so much.
What a great example. I was going to go with like an iPhone cover. Like, I
Oh, yeah.
think
There
I'm
you
getting
go.
the iPhone cover made by Apple, but maybe it's a fake. I don't know, right?
And who cares as long as it fits?
As long as it fits, I don't care. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you bet your bottom dollar that Apple sure cares. And, every reputable manufacturer wants to make sure that their customers are getting the genuine article. Birkenstock left Amazon several years ago because Amazon couldn't police the amount of fake Birkenstocks getting into the Amazon supply chain. So
Wow.
Birkenstock just said, we're getting out of that. We're not going to sell any authorized products through Amazon. If you find Birkenstock on Amazon, it's not real.
It's not real.
That's
Wow.
right. That's right.
Wow.
So it is an interesting problem and opportunity that Amazon could potentially fix, but I haven't seen any signs of a fix on the pipeline here. Boy, what a fun topic to get into, that we meandered from cardiovascular
Cardiovascular,
magnesium
yes.
to
Yes.
Amazon fraud.
Well, but it has to do with people being the CEO of their own health and being able to access high quality magnesium or other supplements and things that will impact their cardiovascular health. And like I said, if it's good enough to do help, if it's strong enough and good enough to help you, it could harm you. And so you need to know what you're taking and really what it is. So it sounds like, from a supplement perspective, it's just a slam dunk, in my opinion, to take omega-3 fatty acids unless you're eating like a can of sardines every day and salmon and walnuts and chia seeds and all of that, which are magic foods, but also magnesium.
Yeah.
It sounds like that should be part of everybody's armamentarium for good cardiovascular help, and probably starting at a young age, just for their entire nervous system and their muscles and cramps and things like that. But especially for us as we enter our 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, to protect our heart and allow that relaxation, allow a natural blood pressure medication in the form of magnesium. So thank you for bringing research to the supplement world. Thank you for bringing the information about all of these supplements to our listeners. And where can people find information about magnesium SRT and verify, trust but verify your third-party testing?
Right.
And where can they find you?
Well, thank you again for having me on the show. It's been so fun. This is one of my favorite subjects to talk about. I love anytime anybody asks. You can find out more at jigsawhealth.com. That's our website that has all the information about the Scottsdale Magnesium Study, about MAG-SRT, about MagSoothe, the nighttime magnesium, about Brain Boost. And we even have a magnesium lotion called Mag Relief. And I really like that form of magnesium chloride applied directly to the skin. I tend to use that when I have out pickleballed or outplayed my allotted magnesium intake. It's just great for targeted muscle relief. Specifically, my calves or my feet is where I'll feel it if I spend a little too much time in the Arizona sun out on a pickleball court. So jigsawhealth.com for all of that. And the show notes for my 5 favorite ways to get magnesium. That's a fun little one too.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your brilliant information.